Imagine having, like, a secret key to understanding something really complex.
Yeah.
Or maybe even better, a blueprint to build your own version of it, without getting totally bogged down in endless details.
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into exactly that kind of resource. It's the QAGS 3rd edition System Reference Document, or Q3E SRD for short.
And this isn't your typical rulebook, not at all. It's got this really interesting dual purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, primarily it's a system reference document for creators. Think of it almost like an open source toolkit.
Right.
If you want to build your own game using the Q3E system, you totally can. It's under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 international license.
Okay.
All it asks is that you provide the required attribution, give credit where it's due.
So it's actually designed for people to remix and build on. That's a pretty powerful idea. And the second purpose?
Well, secondarily, it kind of functions as a quick start guide. It gives you just the essential rules you need to actually play the game right away. It's light, it's accessible. It sort of assumes you're casually familiar with role-playing basics, maybe, but it hands you everything you need to just jump straight into a story.
So for you, our listener, our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack this SRD. We're going to highlight the core mechanics, what makes Q3E tick, uncover its most distinctive features, maybe some surprising ones, and really dig into how it manages to balance having comprehensive rules with this very flexible narrative-driven feel.
Think of it as your shortcut, maybe. A way to grasp the essence of Q3E, whether you're looking to play or maybe just get some inspiration for your own creative stuff.
What's really fascinating to me is how this single document can be both like a legal framework for game design and a practical guide for just playing.
It really emphasizes flexibility and user agency right from the start, which is honestly a pretty rare design choice.
Okay, let's unpack one of the most fundamental things in any RPG, building your character. How does that work in Q3E? It starts with traits, right? Some descriptive, some with ratings.
Exactly. And kind of at the heart of it all is your hero factor, or HS.
Hero factor.
Yeah, the hero factor isn't just a number. It's Q3E's sort of elegant shortcut to defining your character's whole power tier. It directly dictates their hero die. That's the main die you'll roll for, like pretty much all ability checks.
So like a different size die depending on how heroic you are?
Precisely. And HF1 is a normal person, and they get a 1d4 hero die, a 4-sider.
Right.
But you crank that up to HF5, now you're a superhero rocking a 1d12 hero die, a big 12-sider.
Wow, okay.
It's just an instant snapshot of your character's baseline competence,
That scales things really cleanly. So defining those sort of natural abilities, there are 3 core attributes, body, brain, and nerve. How are those rated?
They use dice, too, rated from a d4, that 4-sided die representing below average ability, all the way up to a d12, 12-sider for superhuman levels, and a d6, a regular 6-sided die. That's average.
Okay.
So think of it like this. Body is all about physical stuff. Can you outrun someone, dodge a punch, open that ridiculously stubborn pickle jar? That's body.
The pickle jar test. Classic.
Then there's brain. That's your mental horsepower. Searching for clues, solving for X, remembering who played Eunice on Mama's Family.
Okay, deep cut there. And nerve. Is that just about being brave?
Not just brave, it's also self-confidence, emotional intelligence, that kind of thing. You'll roll nerve to make a good first impression, or master your fears, or even like make the crowd go wild if you're performing.
So social and emotional strength too. Gotcha.
Exactly. It's about your resilience in those areas.
So beyond those core stats, what really defines a character's specific role? Their niche.
Right. That's where calling comes in. It's both a descriptive tag and a rating. Goes from +1 for an amateur up to +5 for a living legend. And it captures their main profession or role. Could be cop, space pilot, wizard, or even something quirky like an aspiring actor who fights monsters to pay the bills.
I like that.
The examples they give are fantastic, really diverse, like Elvis impersonator, X-ray technician, Zeppelin pilot. Gets the imagination going.
That's a great way to immediately place a character, but then there's the gimmick. This is where things get really unique, right?
Oh, absolutely. The gimmick is a special trait, maybe an ability that's really unique to that character in the game's genre.
So like?
Tough as nails for a gritty detective, maybe, or demonic powers in a dark fantasy game. What's clever is that gimmicks are mostly good for you, but they can come with negative side effects. Or sometimes the gimmick itself kind of functions as a weakness, too.
How so?
Well, like the example of a small halfling.
Yeah.
Great for hiding easily, right? That's the upside. but struggles to jump across wide chasms. That's the downside baked in.
I see.
Or maybe you have an ice form gimmick, but that means you take extra damage from fire attacks.
Okay, makes sense. And the flip side of gimmicks are weaknesses. These are the serious disadvantages or flaws.
Right. And I like that the document really emphasizes making them relevant to the actual game you're playing.
Yeah, that seems key.
Exactly. Like, seasickness is a great weakness if you're running an island hopping campaign, but pretty pointless if you're crawling through a desert dungeon.
Right.
And sometimes you can even flip them, turn them to your advantage.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a horribly disfigured character uses their appearance to intimidate people.
That encourages some creative thinking, doesn't it?
Definitely. It pushes you towards interesting role-playing choices.
Okay, so to add even more flavor, there are also skills and flaws.
Yeah.
These sound like ways to layer specific interests or failings on top of the main attributes.
Yeah, basically. Skills represent specific interests or hobbies that maybe aren't fully covered by body, brain, or nerve, things like boating or swordsmanship.
Gotcha.
Flaws are the opposite things the character is just notably bad at, like being bad with names, even if you have a high brain score.
Right.
And mechanically, flaws are kind of interesting because taking them gives you extra freebie points during character creation.
Oh, so there's an incentive to embrace the quirks.
Exactly. It encourages you to build in those imperfections right from the start.
Then there are derived traits, like hit points and luck. But the part that really jumps out is how flexible the system gets with hooks and hacks. These sounds like they really open things up narratively.
Oh, totally. This is where Q3E really leans into deep customization. Hooks and hacks are for character traits that just don't quite fit the standard rules neatly.
Okay.
They're often used to refine gimmicks and weaknesses, or maybe model some really unique trait that you can't easily describe otherwise.
So hooks are just descriptive, like flavor text.
Pretty much. Like the example, dwarves can see as well in darkness as most creatures can in full daylight. Or, Harry Potter's lightning bolt scar.
Right, it just is. No mechanical bonus or penalty.
Exactly. But hacks. Hacks do connect game mechanics directly to the narrative.
Ah, okay. How does that work?
There's special rules for traits that you can't really describe satisfactorily with the standard rules. They make the game feel more specific and unique to your character.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Patchy's hook hand has a +1 damage bonus when used as a weapon,
Okay.
but forces him to roll with disadvantage when attempting an action that requires fancy finger work. See, specific mechanical effects tied to the description.
Yeah.
Or another one, Sir Gawain's strength is tied to the sun, reaching its peak at noon, so maybe he gets bonuses to strength rolls at certain times of day.
That's brilliant. It sounds like that gives GMs incredible fine-grained control to customize things, right? To make the world and characters feel really unique to their game.
That's exactly the point. It allows for these truly unique, story-driven abilities that feel organic.
Yeah.
And you don't have to invent whole complex new rule systems every time you want something special.
Very cool. Okay, so beyond the mechanics, Q3E really leans into the, let's call it the human element of character design. Every character needs a name, naturally. And the system seems pretty flexible, from Pinky Tuscadero to T-1000.
Yeah, though it does advise maybe steering clear of obvious joke names unless the whole game is meant to be humorous. Samuel L. Jackson the Barbarian might get old fast.
Good point. Then there's this WWPHITM thing.
Ah, yes. Who would play him, her, them in the movie?
Right.
This is just a brilliant, immediate shorthand. It helps convey character, attitude, emotions, personality, just by picturing an actor.
Even if you just use a famous role.
Totally, like saying the woman who played Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road. Boom. Everyone at the table instantly gets a sense of the character's vibe.
That's really clever. And your tagline adds more flavor, too, like a quote that sums them up.
Yeah, something that gives an immediate impression, like, that's what I do. I drink and I know things. Or maybe, it's clobberin' time. Yeah. It's not necessarily something they have to say all the time, but it describes their essence.
Got it. And finally, dumb facts. This sounds like a fun catch-all.
It really is. It's for all that background stuff, appearance details, personality quirks, stuff that doesn't affect game mechanics at all but adds tons of flavor, like made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs, or used to live on a planet where they juggled geese. Just fun little details.
I like that it specifically says these don't impose mechanical penalties, but players can choose to apply penalties voluntarily for role-playing.
Right.
Does that ever get tricky? Like, does it subtly pressure players to penalize themselves even when the rules don't require it? Sort of blurring mechanics and role-playing?
That's a fair question. I think the SRD tries to head that off by really emphasizing that it's voluntary.
Yeah.
The agency is completely with the player.
Yeah, okay.
The goal is to encourage immersion, right? Not to punish someone for not taking a penalty. A good group, a healthy table culture reinforces that. It's purely for your own enjoyment of the role-playing, not some kind of optimization tactic.
Builds trust, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fosters a collaborative spirit.
Okay, so you've built this cool character. Now, what happens when you actually want to do something in the game? What's the basic role?
The basic role is pretty fundamental. You roll your hero die, plus the relevant attribute die, body, brain, or nerve,
Right.
plus either your luck die or your calling bonus, if it applies.
Okay.
Plus any relevant skills minus any flaws. Add it all up.
And who decides if you even need to roll?
That's the GM. Routine stuff. You just succeed. Totally impossible stuff. You just fail. Everything else, you roll the dice.
And you're trying to beat a difficulty number? The DN ranges from 0, super easy, barley and inconvenience, love that, up to 20, Herculean.
Exactly. And it's not always just pass-fail. They have effect thresholds. Meaning you can succeed by different degrees. Like, just beating the DN might be a success, a hit in combat maybe, but beating it by, say, DN +5 could mean you get an extra effect, like tripping your opponent.
Add some nuance to success.
Makes those really good rolls feel more impactful, definitely.
The system also uses a very neat advantage and disadvantage mechanic. Roll 2 hero dice. Keep the higher for advantage, lower for disadvantage. Simple.
Very elegant, yeah. And crucially, multiple advantages or disadvantages don't stack up.
Oh.
Nope, they just cancel each other out, 1 for 1. Or if you have, like, 3 advantages and 1 disadvantage, you just end up with advantage. Keeps the dice pool simple.
That avoids complexity creep. Good. Now, here's one of the mechanics that really caught my eye. Success at cost. This sounds like a fantastic way to keep the story moving forward.
Oh, it's a narrative powerhouse, truly. Success at cost applies when your roll exactly equals the DN.
Right on the nose.
Instead of just failing, the player gets a choice. You can choose to succeed, but there's an unintended negative consequence.
Like what?
Like, you manage to climb that fence, sure, but you catch your leg on a rusty nail on the way over. Ouch.
Okay.
It guarantees that even those borderline rolls push the story forward somehow. Prevents those frustrating dead ends where nothing happens. It creates organic complications.
And if you don't want the consequence?
Then the action just fails as normal. The choice is yours. Adds great tension.
The SRD also has this useful sidebar on units of game time. It seems really flexible.
Yeah, it scales all the way from a segment, like a few seconds for one character's turn to fight, up through rounds, turns, hours, days, weeks, even years for campaign arcs, and then abstract units like session, adventure, story arc, campaign.
Lets you zoom in or out as needed.
Exactly. And for those really complex or extended actions, the ones where a single roll just wouldn't feel right, Q3E uses trackers.
Trackers, like progress bars.
Kinda, yeah. You represent progress by filling in boxes or making tick marks or filling segments of a circle.
Okay.
And GMs can customize these, add triggers, milestones. You can even have conflict trackers where one character's rolls fill boxes and another's empty them out.
Oh, neat. Like for a chase.
Perfect example.
Cool.
Or maybe sneaking through a guarded complex or fighting your way through a cavern that's just teeming with goblins. You don't roll for every single goblin. You use a tracker to show progress clearing the horde.
That seems like a really smart way to handle longer sequences without getting bogged down in endless rolls. Keeps the narrative focused.
Exactly. Abstract the process, focus on the outcome and the key moments.
Okay, let's talk combat. It's a staple, right?
Yeah.
How does Q3E handle the brutal ballet of a fight scene? Where does initiative come in?
Initiative is pretty fluid. Whoever actually starts the fight goes first.
Makes sense.
Then, players can pass the turn to any character, friend, or foe who hasn't acted yet in that round.
Oh, interesting. Tactical choices there.
Yeah, and you can hold your action too. Combat movement is generally assumed to be close quarters, everyone in one big melee.
Unless
the scene clearly has separate sights happening, then the GM can just declare multiple melees.
Okay. And getting out of a fight.
You can run away, but opponents might get free attacks. Or you can try a fighting retreat, which uses a tracker. Successful attacks fill boxes, and when it's full, you've successfully disengaged.
Gotcha. So, attacking and defending. Both sides roll.
Usually, yeah. Attacker rolls, defender rolls to resist. If the attacker wins, then you figure out damage.
And damage depends on the weapon.
Right. It's based on weapon type, using different dice, ranges from like a D4 for a fist or a steak knife, all the way up to a D20 for artillery fire or a massive kaiju claw.
Wow, okay. Big range.
And if the defender has armor, their armor rating reduces the incoming damage. Pretty standard stuff there.
But it also mentions GMs can codify special attacks or tropes.
Yeah, that's part of the flexibility. Like, the example given is for a Sin City-style game. The GM might rule that major characters only take 1 point of damage from guns, reflecting the comic book toughness.
Oh.
But they take normal damage from melee. It lets you bake the genre conventions right into the rules.
That's clever. Okay, damage and wounds. There are 2 tiers, minor and serious.
Right. Minor damage is when your hit points are still positive. Annoying, but you're up. But if your HP drops to 0 or less, things get serious. That leads to wounds,
which are a key mechanic for handling major injuries.
Exactly. If your body attribute die is a D6 or higher, you have the option, when you hit 0 HP or below, to take a wound instead of falling unconscious immediately.
Okay, what does taking a wound do?
It lets you keep fighting, but at a cost. You temporarily drop your body die type by 1 step, so a D12 becomes a D10, a D10 becomes a D8, and so on.
Oof, that hurts.
It does. But your HP adjusts based on the new die type, potentially bringing you back above 0. The GM notes the general location of the wound leg, gut, head, arm, whatever.
But you feel it later.
Yeah, the adrenaline carries you through the fight. The real effects, the penalties associated with that wound location, kick in after the combat ends.
Okay. And beyond just HP loss and wounds, there are conditions. Status effects.
Pretty much. They provide consistent rules for broader setbacks, things like being distracted, impaired, prone, or stunned. Each one comes with specific penalties, usually making certain actions harder or impossible.
And this leads to that really important distinction the SRD makes, impairment versus disability.
Yes, this is a really thoughtful part of the design. It points out that temporary impairments, like being stunned or having a broken arm right now, should carry hefty penalties because the character is actively struggling and adjusting in real time.
Okay.
But permanent disabilities are different. People with disabilities adapt. They find tools. They develop strategies.
So the game advises against just slapping penalties on characters with disabilities. That feels significant. It challenges how a lot of games handle this, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's pushing GMs and players to think more inclusively, more creatively, and frankly, more realistically.
Oh, so?
The philosophy is, only apply mechanical penalties when the character's specific tools or adaptive strategies are genuinely unusable in the situation, or if the task heavily and directly relies on the specific ability that's diminished.
Not just assuming a penalty applies.
Exactly. Don't just assume because you think an ability is vital that it is for that character in that situation. The example given is like a blind character using a computer. They might just use accessibility settings or a voice assistant. No penalty needed for a standard hacking roll.
That encourages a much more nuanced and respectful portrayal.
Totally. It moves beyond simple, often harmful assumptions baked into older game mechanics.
That's a really strong design choice. Okay, so after the fight, the adrenaline fades. That's the post-combat reckoning.
Right. Characters deal with the consequences. HP recovers a bit naturally, but if you're still negative, you're likely unconscious or incapacitated.
Add those wounds you took.
Now you feel them. Characters who took wounds have to make body rolls to see if they recover their lost attribute die types. If they fail, they keep suffering penalties related to the wound's location until they heal properly.
Which brings us to healing. How does that work?
3 main ways. There's first aid, immediate care from others right after combat. There's natural healing, which is basically resting over time, usually between adventures. It takes longer, but gets the job done.
And the third way?
And then there's the power of yum-yums.
Ah, yum-yums. Okay, so you've survived, maybe even thrived. How does your character grow? And what else are these yum-yums good for? They sound fun.
They really are. Yum-yums are basically points the GM awards for making the game more enjoyable for everyone at the table.
Like how?
Saying something funny or clever in character, solving a tough puzzle, contributing a cool idea to the world building, even bringing snacks for the group.
Rewarding snacks with in-game currency. Genius.
Right. Who doesn't love a GM rewarding pizza with player agency?
Oh.
And beyond just healing, you can spend yum-yums to recover HP or even remove penalties from wounds.
Okay.
They have amazing versatility. You can spend them mid-session to add your luck die to a roll you just made, or re-roll a die completely, or just add a flat +1 bonus to a roll, or even check off boxes on a tracker.
Wow, that gives players a lot of direct control over influencing outcomes.
Exactly. It lets you actively manage your character's fortune, push the narrative, overcome obstacles, real agency.
That's brilliant. My group would be fighting over who brought the best snacks to earn those. Okay, so how does experience and character improvement work? It uses a decimal system.
Yeah, it's kind of unique. Instead of tracking thousands of XP, you spend earned yum-yums at the end of an adventure to improve traits. You add zero point 0.1 to a trait's value.
0.1.
Yep. And when that decimal part reaches the next whole number, like going from 2.9 to 3.0, the ability actually increases. The die type gets bigger or the bonus goes up.
Interesting. And the big one is improving hero factor.
Right.
That has extra benefits.
Huge benefits. Increasing your hero factor doesn't just give you +1 HP and some points to spend elsewhere. You also gain an advantageous new hook or hack.
Oh, and it's tied to what happened in the game.
Directly tied to past game events. This is such a cool feature. It grounds character growth right in the narrative.
So, like, if your character gets a reputation for always busting down doors...
Exactly. They might gain a hook or hack that gives them a bonus specifically for breaking things. Or if they're always the one finding clues, maybe they get a hack allowing passive perception checks for clues they aren't even actively looking for.
That makes improvement feel really earned and part of the story, not just numbers going up.
Precisely. It feels organic.
And players can spend leftover yum-yums on other things too. Calling, luck, attributes, skills.
Yep, all those can be improved too, though they have different yum-yum costs associated with them. You can also spend points to get rid of flaws eventually.
What about gimmicks and weaknesses? How do they change?
Those evolve more organically by GM fiat, based on what happens in the story. A gimmick might become irrelevant, or a character might overcome a weakness through their actions, or gain a new one.
And the GM adjusts luck accordingly.
Right. The GM reevaluates the character's luck die when those major traits change to reflect their new narrative position. And the SRD wraps up with a list of optional rules, too. Things like point-based character creation instead of the standard method, using static monster stats instead of rolling for them. It just reinforces that core Q3E commitment to flexibility and letting groups customize their game.
Okay, so we've really dug into the QAGS 3rd edition SRD here. We've seen how it offers this refreshingly light yet surprisingly robust framework for creating characters, driven by these really evocative traits like WWPHITM and dumb facts.
Yeah, and we explored some unique mechanics like that success at cost, which is just fantastic for keeping the story flowing, and the flexible tracker system for handling those bigger, complex challenges.
And we highlighted how yum-yums put real power in the player's hands, giving them agency over their character's fate.
Absolutely. And crucially, we saw how the game ties character progression directly into the unfolding story. Even when dealing with potentially sensitive topics like character conditions and disabilities, it encourages GMs to think critically and inclusively about how the mechanics reflect the world.
It feels like this SRD isn't just a rulebook, it's almost a design philosophy. It really emphasizes narrative, player choice, and this adaptable approach to game design.
It's a really powerful example of how creative frameworks can be shared, open-sourced, inviting people to participate and adapt them, builds a real community around the system, you know?
It really makes you think about the impact of that openness.
Yeah, what does it truly mean for a system to be open like this?
So, for you listening, beyond just playing the game, maybe think about this. How might exploring a document like the Q3E SRD inspire you? Could it help you see the underlying structures in other complex systems you encounter? And maybe even spark ideas about how you could adapt things or even create something entirely new yourself.